In today's captivating story, a single mother stumbles upon a discarded luxury dress by a wealthy woman, leading to a life-changing moment. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and if you'd like to support us in creating more amazing content, consider donating through the link in the pinned comment. Now, let's dive into this incredible tale. Olivia Martinez struggled to catch her breath as she rushed down the bustling streets of New York City, her worn-out sneakers barely holding together. At 32, she was a single mother working 2 jobs to support her 7-year-old daughter, Sophia. Today was supposed to be her day off, but her landlord had just informed her of an impending rent increase. Desperate to find a solution, Olivia decided to walk through the affluent Upper East Side, hoping for inspiration or a miracle. As she turned a corner onto Madison Avenue, her eyes widened at the sight before her. A sleek, black limousine had pulled up in front of a high-end boutique. The back door opened, and out stepped a woman who exuded wealth and sophistication. Olivia couldn't help but stare at the woman's impeccable appearance. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair, flawless makeup, and a designer dress that probably cost more than Olivia's yearly rent. The wealthy woman, Vivian Sinclair, strode purposefully into the boutique, leaving her chauffeur to wait outside. Olivia found herself drawn to the store's window display, marveling at the exquisite gowns that seemed to mock her very existence. She pressed her face against the glass, imagining for a moment what it would be like to wear something so beautiful. Inside, Vivian was on a mission. She had a charity gala to attend that evening, and nothing in her extensive wardrobe seemed suitable. As she perused the racks, her eyes fell upon a breathtaking emerald green silk gown. Without hesitation, she asked to try it on. Olivia watched from outside as Vivian emerged from the dressing room, the green dress hugging her curves perfectly. But to Olivia's surprise, Vivian's face contorted in disgust. She overheard the wealthy woman complain loudly about the dress being out last season and utterly unwearable. What happened next left Olivia in shock. Vivian hastily changed back into her original outfit and, in a fit of entitlement, demanded that the store dispose of the atrocious green dress. The flustered sales associate, not wanting to upset a valued customer, agreed to Vivian's outrageous request. As Vivian exited the store empty-handed, Olivia's heart raced. She watched in disbelief as the sales associate reluctantly carried the beautiful green dress towards the back of the store, presumably to be discarded. In that moment, Olivia made a split-second decision that would change her life forever. Gathering all her courage, she entered the boutique, her shabby appearance drawing curious glances from the other patrons. With trembling hands, she approached the sales associate and asked about the fate of the green dress. The associate, touched by Olivia's genuine interest and unaware of the life-altering moment unfolding before her, hesitated before making an unprecedented offer. "You know what? If you want it, you can have it. We were just going to throw it away anyway," the associate said, her voice a mix of sympathy and conspiracy. Olivia could hardly believe her ears. Was this really happening? As the associate handed her the dress, carefully wrapped in a garment bag, Olivia felt as though she were in a dream. She clutched the bag to her chest, mumbled a heartfelt, "Thank you," and hurried out of the store before anyone could change their mind. As she stepped back onto the sidewalk, the weight of the garment bag in her arms felt surreal. Olivia looked down at her prize, her mind racing with possibilities. Little did she know that this discarded dress would become the catalyst for a series of events that would intertwine her life with Vivian's in ways neither of them could have ever imagined. With trembling hands, Olivia unzipped the garment bag in her tiny studio apartment. As the emerald green silk spilled out, she gasped. The dress was even more beautiful up close, its intricate beadwork catching the dim light from her bedside lamp. For a moment, she hesitated, feeling out of place even touching such a luxurious item. Sophia, her daughter, watched wide-eyed from the corner of the room. "Mommy, it's like a princess dress," she exclaimed, her voice filled with wonder. Olivia smiled at her daughter's innocence. "It is, isn't it?" she replied softly. Taking a deep breath, She decided to try it on. What harm could it do? As she slipped into the dress, Olivia felt a transformation taking place. The silk caressed her skin, cool and smooth. She zipped it up with bated breath, afraid it wouldn't fit. But to her amazement, it hugged her curves perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Olivia turned to look in the cracked full-length mirror propped against the wall. The reflection that stared back at her left her speechless. Gone was the tired, overworked single mother. In her place stood a woman of grace and beauty, her olive skin glowing against the deep green of the dress. Sophia clapped her hands in delight. "Mommy, you look like Cinderella." Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. For the first time in years, she felt beautiful, worthy. But reality quickly set in. Where could she possibly wear such a dress? As if on cue, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from her second job as a part-time office cleaner. The company was hosting a charity gala that weekend, and they needed extra staff to help with the event. The pay was double her usual rate. Olivia's heart raced. Could this be her chance? She quickly replied, accepting the offer. As she hit send, a plan began to form in her mind. It was risky, potentially disastrous, but the allure of one night in a different world was too strong to resist. The night of the gala arrived, and Olivia's nerves were on edge. She had asked her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, to watch Sophia for the evening. As she kissed her daughter goodbye, Sophia whispered, "Have fun at the ball, Cinderella." Olivia arrived at the Grand Hotel where the gala was being held. She slipped into a back entrance, clutching a bag containing her cleaning uniform. Finding an empty supply closet, she quickly changed into the emerald dress, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure someone would hear. She pinned up her dark hair, applied the little makeup she owned, and stepped into a pair of second-hand heels she'd bought for the occasion. Taking a deep breath, Olivia emerged from the closet and made her way towards the ballroom. As she approached the entrance, doubt began to creep in. What was she thinking? She didn't belong here. Just as she was about to turn back, a voice called out to her. "Excuse me, miss. Are you here for the gala?" Olivia turned to see a handsome man in a tuxedo smiling at her. His kind eyes put her at ease, and she found herself nodding. "I'm James, one of the event organizers," he said, offering his arm. "You look lost. Please, allow me to escort you inside." Before she could protest, Olivia found herself being led into the ballroom. The opulence of the scene took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the elegantly dressed attendees. The soft strains of a string quartet filled the air. As James guided her through the crowd, Olivia felt eyes upon her, but instead of judgment, she saw admiration. Women whispered about her dress. Men turned their heads to look at her. For one magical moment, Olivia felt like she truly belonged. But then, across the room, her eyes locked with a familiar face. Vivian Sinclair, the woman who had discarded the very dress Olivia was wearing, was staring at her with a mixture of confusion and growing recognition. Olivia's heart stopped. Her Cinderella moment was about to come crashing down around her. As Vivian began to make her way across the room, Olivia knew her fairy tale was about to end. But little did she know, this confrontation would set in motion a series of events that would change both their lives forever. Vivian Sinclair's heels clicked against the marble floor as she approached Olivia, her eyes narrowing with each step. Olivia felt her throat tighten, her fairy tale moment evaporating like mist in the morning sun. She braced herself for the inevitable confrontation, her mind racing to find an explanation. "That dress," Vivian said, her voice a mixture of surprise and accusation. "How did you—" Before Olivia could stammer out a response, James interjected. "Vivian, I see you've met our guest of honor," he said smoothly, placing a protective hand on Olivia's back. Vivian's eyebrows shot up. "Guest of honor?" she repeated, her tone incredulous. James nodded, his smile never wavering. Yes, Ms. Martinez here is the recipient of our foundation's annual Unsung Hero Award. She's a single mother who works tirelessly to support her daughter while volunteering at local shelters. We wanted to surprise her with a night of luxury. Olivia stood frozen, her mind struggling to process James's unexpected lie. She glanced at him, seeing a subtle wink that told her to play along. Vivian's demeanor shifted instantly, her accusing look morphing into one of practiced charity. "Oh, how wonderful," she cooed, though Olivia could detect a hint of skepticism in her voice. "Well, Ms. Martinez, you certainly look the part in that stunning gown." As Vivian engaged in small talk, peppering Olivia with questions about her supposed charitable work, Olivia found herself weaving an intricate tapestry of half-truths and outright fabrications. She spoke of imaginary volunteer hours at shelters she'd only seen from the outside, of a daughter whose struggles and triumphs were very real, but whose circumstances were embellished for effect. To Olivia's surprise, she found herself enjoying the conversation. There was a thrill in being someone else, even if just for one night. As she spoke, she noticed something unexpected in Vivian's eyes, a glimmer of genuine interest, perhaps even admiration. The evening progressed, and Olivia found herself swept up in a world she'd only dreamed of. She danced with James, laughed with socialites, and even made a short, heartfelt speech when presented with her fictional award. For a few magical hours, she wasn't Olivia Martinez, the struggling single mother, but Ms. Martinez, the philanthropist and local hero. As the night wore on, Olivia excused herself, knowing she needed to change back into her cleaning uniform before her shift officially began. She slipped away to the supply closet, her heart heavy with the knowledge that her Cinderella moment was coming to an end. But as she reached for the doorknob, a voice behind her made her freeze. "Ms. Martinez, what are you doing back here?" Olivia turned slowly to find Vivian standing there, her expression a mix of confusion and dawning realization. The jig was up. In that moment, Olivia made a decision. She was tired of pretending, tired of living in fear. With a deep breath, she looked Vivian in the eye and told her the truth, all of it. She spoke of her struggles, of finding the discarded dress, of her desperate desire for one night of escape. To Olivia's astonishment, Vivian didn't call security or storm off in disgust. Instead, she listened, really listened, perhaps for the first time in her life. As Olivia's story unfolded, something in Vivian's carefully constructed worldview began to shift. I had no idea," Vivian said softly when Olivia finished. "I've never thought about... I donate to charities, but I've never really seen..." Olivia nodded, understanding the unspoken revelation. "It's easy to forget there are real people behind the statistics," she said gently. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them, two women from vastly different worlds suddenly seeing each other clearly for the first time. Finally, Vivian spoke. "I'd like to help," she said, her voice firm with newfound purpose. "Not just with money, but really help. Would you be willing to show me your world, Olivia? To help me understand?" Olivia was stunned. This was not how she had expected the evening to end. But as she looked at Vivian, she saw something she recognized, a woman on the brink of transformation, much like herself when she first put on the green dress. "Yes," Olivia said, a small smile forming on her lips. "I'd like that." As they stood there in the dimly lit hallway, Olivia and Vivian both knew that their lives had changed irrevocably. The barrier between their worlds had been breached, and neither of them could go back to who they were before. Little did they know, this unexpected alliance would lead them down a path of discovery, challenge, and ultimately, redemption. The real journey was just beginning. The days following the gala were a whirlwind for both Olivia and Vivian. True to her word, Vivian reached out to Olivia, proposing a radical idea. They would spend a week living each other's lives. Olivia was hesitant at first. but the prospect of providing her daughter with a glimpse of a different life, even if just for a week, was too tempting to resist. As the sun rose on Monday morning, Olivia found herself standing in front of Vivian's palatial Upper East Side townhouse, feeling like an imposter. Vivian greeted her at the door, already dressed in Olivia's well-worn jeans and faded t-shirt, an excited gleam in her eye. "Remember, you're me this week," Vivian said, handing Olivia a credit card and a set of car keys. "My schedule is on the kitchen counter. Good luck." Before Olivia could protest, Vivian was gone, leaving her alone in a house that could fit her entire apartment building. Sophia, wide-eyed and grinning, tugged at her hand. "Mommy, can we explore?" Meanwhile, across town, Vivian stood in Olivia's tiny studio apartment, the reality of her situation sinking in. The pipe under the sink was leaking. The refrigerator was nearly empty, and she could hear the neighbors arguing through the paper-thin walls. This was going to be harder than she thought. As the week progressed, both women found themselves challenged in ways they never expected. Olivia struggled with the pressure of maintaining Vivian's social obligations, attending charity board meetings, and managing a household staff. She felt out of place at every turn, but she was determined to succeed. Olivia found herself in tears after a disastrous lunch with Vivian's socialite friends, where her lack of knowledge about the latest fashion trends and vacation hotspots had left her feeling humiliated. Vivian, meanwhile, was sitting on the floor of Olivia's apartment, surrounded by past-due bills, wondering how on earth Olivia managed to keep her head above water. It was in these moments of despair that both women had their most profound realizations. Olivia, looking at herself in the mirror of Vivian's opulent bathroom, understood that the trappings of wealth came with their own set of pressures and expectations. The constant need to maintain appearances, the shallow relationships, the lack of privacy, it all seemed suffocating. Vivian, as she tucked an exhausted Sophia into bed, reading her a bedtime story from a tattered library book, felt a warmth she had never experienced before. The unconditional love between Olivia and her daughter, the resilience they showed in the face of hardship, the simple joys they found in each other's company, it all touched something deep within her. As the week neared its end, both women had undergone profound changes. Olivia had gained confidence and learned to navigate the upper echelons of society with grace, while Vivian had discovered a strength and empathy she never knew she possessed. On the final day of their experiment, they met at a small cafe halfway between their two worlds. As they sat across from each other, there was a newfound respect and understanding in their eyes. "I don't know how you do it," Vivian admitted, her voice filled with admiration. "The strength it takes to face each day, to provide for Sophia. I've never worked so hard in my life." Olivia smiled softly. "And I never realized the pressure you're under, the constant scrutiny, the expectations. It's exhausting in its own way." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, sipping their coffee, each lost in thought. "You know," Vivian said suddenly, "I think I've been looking at charity all wrong. Writing checks is easy, but really making a difference, that's something else entirely." Olivia nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. "And I've learned that having money doesn't solve everything. It's about how you use it, the choices you make." As they continued to talk, a plan began to form between them, a plan that would not only change their lives but the lives of countless others in their city. Little did they know, their week of walking in each other's shoes was just the beginning of a partnership that would shake the foundations of their society and challenge the very notions of class and privilege. The cafe bustled around them, oblivious to the momentous conversation taking place. Two women, from vastly different worlds, were about to embark on a journey that would redefine success, compassion, and the true meaning of wealth. The weeks following their life-swapping experiment were a flurry of activity for Olivia and Vivian. Their shared experiences had sparked an idea that refused to be ignored, a bold initiative they called Bridging the Gap. The concept was simple yet revolutionary. create a program that would pair wealthy individuals with those struggling to make ends meet, allowing them to experience each other's lives firsthand. The goal was to foster empathy, understanding, and ultimately, actionable change. Vivian, with her connections and resources, took charge of recruiting participants from her social circle. Many were skeptical at first, viewing the idea as a publicity stunt or a fleeting act of charity. But Vivian's passionate advocacy, backed by her own transformative experience, began to sway even the most cynical of her peers. Olivia, on the other hand, faced the challenge of convincing people from her community to participate. Many were wary, fearing exploitation or humiliation, but Olivia's sincerity and the potential for real change slowly won them over. Her colleagues from her cleaning job, her neighbors, and even her landlord cautiously agreed to give it a try. As the program took shape, Olivia and Vivian encountered numerous obstacles. Legal issues needed to be addressed, safety concerns had to be mitigated, and logistics had to be ironed out. They worked tirelessly, often late into the night, refining their idea and addressing every possible contingency. The media caught wind of the project, and suddenly, Olivia and Vivian found themselves in the spotlight. Talk shows wanted interviews, newspapers requested features, and social media buzzed with discussions about bridging the gap. The attention was overwhelming, but it also brought unexpected support and resources. A local tech company offered to develop an app to facilitate the program. A prestigious law firm provided pro bono services to handle the legal aspects. Even city officials, sensing the potential for positive change, pledged their support. The day of the program's launch arrived with a mix of excitement and trepidation. 20 pairs of participants gathered in a community center, ready to embark on their week-long journey. The atmosphere was tense, filled with awkward silences and nervous glances. Olivia and Vivian stood before the group, their own story serving as a powerful testament to the potential of the program. As they spoke, sharing their experiences and the changes they had undergone, the tension in the room began to dissipate. One by one, the pairs introduced themselves. There was Michael, a Wall Street executive, paired with Elena, a single mother working 3 jobs. Sarah, a famous actress, was matched with Tom, a teacher in an underfunded school. Each pair represented a bridge across the vast divide of social and economic inequality. As the week progressed, Olivia and Vivian watched with a mixture of anxiety and hope. They received daily updates, some heartening, others concerning. There were moments of conflict, misunderstandings, and culture shocks on both sides. But there were also breakthroughs, moments of genuine connection, and dawning realizations. Midweek, a crisis erupted. One of the wealthy participants, feeling overwhelmed by the harsh realities of his partner's life, wanted to quit the program. Olivia and Vivian rushed to mediate, drawing on their own experiences to counsel both parties. It was a tense few hours, but in the end, their intervention not only saved the pairing, but led to a profound moment of mutual understanding. As the experiment neared its end, Olivia and Vivian began to see the fruits of their labor. Participants from both sides of the economic divide were forming genuine friendships. More importantly, they were beginning to question long-held assumptions and prejudices. The final day of the program was marked by an emotional gathering. Tears were shed, hugs were exchanged, and promises to stay in touch were made. But beyond the personal connections, there was a palpable sense of change in the air. Michael, the Wall Street executive, announced his intention to start a microloan program for small businesses in underserved communities. Elena, his partner, had agreed to help administer it, bringing her first-hand knowledge of the challenges faced by aspiring entrepreneurs in her neighborhood. Sarah, the actress, pledged to use her platform to raise awareness about education inequality, inspired by her time in Tom's classroom. Tom, in turn, had gained insights into fundraising and networking that he was eager to apply to benefit his school. As Olivia and Vivian listened to the participants share their experiences and future plans, they exchanged a look of quiet triumph. Bridging the gap had exceeded their wildest expectations. They had started a movement, one that had the potential to reshape their city's social landscape. But even as they celebrated this success, both women knew that their work was far from over. The true test would be in the long-term impact of the program, in the sustained changes in behavior and policy that it might inspire. As the gathering wound down, a local news crew approached Olivia and Vivian for a statement. Standing side by side, the unlikely friends turned to the camera, ready to share their vision with the world. Little did they know, their story was about to capture the nation's imagination, catapulting them into a position of influence neither had ever dreamed possible. As Bridging the Gap gained national attention, Olivia and Vivian found themselves thrust into a spotlight they never anticipated. Their story, a tale of two women from vastly different worlds coming together to create social change, captivated the public imagination. News outlets clamored for interviews, talk shows extended invitations, and social media buzzed with discussions about their initiative. The sudden fame brought with it a host of unexpected challenges. Olivia, unused to public scrutiny, felt overwhelmed by the constant attention. Paparazzi began camping outside her modest apartment, disrupting her daily routine and frightening Sophia. The pressure to appear polished and articulate in interviews weighed heavily on her, and she often found herself second-guessing every word. Vivian, more accustomed to the limelight, faced a different set of problems. Some in her social circle viewed her new passion project as a betrayal of their class. Invitations to exclusive events became scarce, and she overheard whispers of her being radicalized at charity galas. Her husband, initially supportive, began to express concern about the amount of time she was dedicating to the program. As the program expanded to other cities, the workload increased exponentially. Olivia and Vivian found themselves traveling frequently, overseeing new branches, and dealing with a growing administrative burden. The demands of their new roles began to take a toll on their personal lives. Olivia struggled to balance her commitment to bridging the gap with her responsibilities as a mother. Sophia, while proud of her mother's achievements, began to act out in school, craving the attention she once had. The guilt of missing important moments in her daughter's life gnawed at Olivia. Vivian's marriage showed signs of strain. Her husband, feeling neglected, buried himself in work and spent increasingly more time away from home. The emotional distance between them grew, even as Vivian found herself forming a deeper connection with Olivia and the cause they shared. 6 months into their journey, a scandal threatened to derail everything they had built. A prominent businessman who had participated in the program was exposed for using the insights he gained to exploit vulnerable communities for profit. The media frenzy was immediate and brutal. Olivia and Vivian found themselves on the defensive, facing tough questions about the vetting process for participants and the potential for abuse within their program. Critics argued that bridging the gap was naive at best and actively harmful at worst, providing the wealthy with tools to further manipulate the less fortunate. The controversy took its toll on both women. Olivia, devastated by the betrayal of trust, questioned whether they had been foolish to believe they could affect real change. Vivian, her reputation in tatters, faced the very real possibility of social and professional ostracism. In the midst of this crisis, an unexpected ally emerged. James, the event organizer who had covered for Olivia at the gala where it all began, reached out. Now working for a major philanthropic foundation, he offered not just emotional support, but also resources to help weather the storm. With James's guidance, Olivia and Vivian worked tirelessly to address the flaws in their program. They implemented stricter vetting procedures, established an ethics board to oversee operations, and created safeguards to protect vulnerable participants. They faced their critics head-on, acknowledging mistakes and outlining concrete steps for improvement. Slowly but surely, they began to rebuild trust. Former participants came forward to share positive stories, counterbalancing the negative press. Community leaders who had seen the program's benefits firsthand became vocal advocates. As the dust settled, Olivia and Vivian found themselves at a crossroads. The scandal had forced them to confront the complexities and potential pitfalls of their vision. They had been naive, perhaps, but their core belief in the power of empathy and understanding remained unshaken. Late one night, as they sat in Vivian's study reviewing plans for the program's future, Olivia noticed Vivian staring at a framed photo on her desk. It was a picture of Vivian with her husband, both smiling at some long-ago event. "Vivian," Olivia said gently, "when was the last time you and Robert really talked?" Vivian's eyes welled up with tears. "I don't remember," she whispered. In that moment, both women realized that in their quest to bridge gaps in society, they had allowed chasms to form in their own lives. The very principles they preached, empathy, understanding, connection, were ones they needed to apply closer to home. As dawn broke, Olivia and Vivian made a pact. They would step back from the day-to-day operations of bridging the gap, trusting their capable team to carry forward the mission. It was time to bridge the gaps in their own lives, with Sophia, with Robert, with the parts of themselves they had neglected in pursuit of their vision. Little did they know, this decision to refocus on their personal lives would lead to the most profound developments yet in their journey. Sometimes, the most important changes begin at home. As Olivia and Vivian stepped back from the forefront of bridging the gap, they found themselves navigating unfamiliar emotional terrain. The whirlwind of the past months had left little time for introspection, and now, faced with the quiet of their own thoughts, both women realized the extent of the personal toll their journey had taken. Olivia threw herself into reconnecting with Sophia. She took a leave of absence from her cleaning job, determined to be present for her daughter. Their tiny apartment, once a symbol of struggle, became a cocoon of healing. They cooked together, laughed over board games, and had long talks that stretched into the night. Slowly, Olivia saw the spark return to Sophia's eyes. One evening, as they sat on their worn couch, Sophia curled up against her side. Olivia broached a subject she'd long avoided. "Sweetie, do you ever think about your dad?" Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes," she finally whispered. "I wonder if he'd be proud of us." Olivia's heart clenched. She'd never told Sophia the full story of her father's departure, fearing it would hurt her daughter. But now, looking into Sophia's questioning eyes, she realized that the absence of truth had created its own kind of pain. Over the next few weeks, Olivia shared with Sophia the story of her relationship with Marco, Sophia's father. She spoke of their young love, their struggles, and ultimately, Marco's inability to cope with the responsibilities of fatherhood. It was a difficult conversation, punctuated by tears and questions. But by the end, both mother and daughter felt a weight lift from their shoulders. Meanwhile, Vivian faced the challenge of rebuilding her marriage. Robert, initially distant, agreed to couples therapy. The sessions were tense at first, years of unspoken resentments bubbling to the surface. Vivian was forced to confront the ways in which she'd taken her husband for granted, while Robert had to acknowledge his own role in their growing apart. Progress was slow and sometimes painful. There were arguments that left both of them questioning whether their marriage could be saved. But there were also moments of tender reconnection, a shared laugh over an old memory, a lingering touch that spoke of forgiveness. One breakthrough came during a weekend getaway to the small beach town where they'd honeymooned. As they walked along the shore at sunset, Robert turned to Vivian. "I've missed you," he said simply. "Not just physically, but the you that gets excited about changing the world. I'm sorry I wasn't more supportive." Vivian's eyes welled with tears. "I'm sorry too," she replied. "I got so caught up in bridging gaps out there that I forgot about the one growing between us." As Olivia and Vivian focused on healing their personal relationships, they found that the lessons they'd learned through bridging the gap took on new meaning. The empathy they'd cultivated, the ability to see beyond surface differences, served them well in navigating the complex emotions of family dynamics. Unexpectedly, their step back from the program allowed bridging the gap to flourish in new ways. The capable team they'd assembled, no longer overshadowed by the founder's celebrity, brought fresh perspectives and innovations to the initiative. The program began to evolve, becoming more nuanced and effective in its approach to fostering understanding across social divides. Olivia and Vivian kept in touch, their friendship deepening as they supported each other through the ups and downs of their personal journeys. Their conversations, once dominated by program logistics and media strategies, now turned to more intimate topics: the challenges of single motherhood, the complexities of long-term relationships, the ongoing process of self-discovery. As months passed, both women began to feel a shift. The raw edges of past hurts began to smooth, replaced by a newfound sense of peace and purpose. Olivia, her relationship with Sophia stronger than ever, started to explore her own long-buried dreams. She enrolled in night classes at a local community college, her eyes set on a degree in social work. Vivian, her marriage on firmer ground, found herself drawn to a new cause. Inspired by Olivia's story, she began working with a nonprofit focused on supporting single mothers pursuing higher education. She brought to the role not just her wealth and connections, but a hard-earned understanding of the challenges these women faced. 1 year after they'd stepped back from bridging the gap, Olivia and Vivian met for coffee at the same cafe where they'd first hatched their plan. As they sat across from each other, both were struck by how much had changed, and how much had stayed the same. "You know," Olivia said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully, "I think we were right about the power of walking in someone else's shoes. We just didn't realize how much we'd learn by walking in our own." Vivian nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. "We set out to change the world," she mused, "and ended up changing ourselves." As they continued to chat, catching up on each other's lives and sharing plans for the future, neither woman could have anticipated the new challenge that was about to upend their carefully reconstructed world. A crisis was looming on the horizon, one that would test the strength of their friendship and the resilience of the movement they'd started in ways they could never have imagined. As Olivia and Vivian were settling into their new rhythms, a global crisis struck with the force of a hurricane, a devastating economic downturn triggered by a perfect storm of factors including a pandemic, climate disasters, and geopolitical tensions, sent shockwaves through every stratum of society. The impact was swift and merciless. Companies folded overnight, unemployment skyrocketed, and the already fragile social safety net began to unravel. The divide between the haves and have-nots, which, bridging the gap, had sought to address, suddenly became a yawning chasm. Olivia felt the effects immediately. The nonprofit she'd been working with struggled to stay afloat as donations dried up. Robert's company faced massive layoffs, and the stress began to strain their newly repaired relationship. As the crisis deepened, bridging the gap faced an existential threat. Many of the wealthy participants, now grappling with their own financial uncertainties, withdrew their support. On the other side, those in need were too focused on day-to-day survival to participate in the program. In the midst of this chaos, Olivia and Vivian found themselves drawn back into the fray. They couldn't stand idly by as the world they'd worked so hard to change crumbled around them. But the challenge they faced now was on a scale they'd never encountered before. Late one night, as Olivia pored over job listings on her battered laptop, her phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. "We need to talk. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., our spot." The next morning, they met at their usual cafe, now a takeout-only operation. As they walked through the nearly deserted streets, clutching paper cups of coffee, the magnitude of the crisis was evident in the boarded-up storefronts and the haunted looks of the few people they passed. "We have to do something," Vivian said, her voice tight with emotion. "Everything we've worked for, it can't have been for nothing." Olivia nodded, her mind racing. "But what can we do? The old model won't work now. People don't need understanding. They need food, jobs, housing." As they brainstormed, a new vision began to take shape. Bridging the Gap needed to evolve, to become a direct action network, leveraging the connections they'd built between different social classes. Over the next few weeks, Olivia and Vivian worked tirelessly to reimagine their initiative. They reached out to past participants, community leaders, and anyone who would listen. The response was overwhelming. People were desperate to help, to feel a sense of purpose in the face of overwhelming uncertainty. They set up a system where those with resources, be it money, skills, or connections, could be quickly matched with those in need. Wealthy individuals who had participated in the program now opened their empty vacation homes to families who had lost their housing. Laid-off professionals offered free online tutoring to students struggling with remote learning. Restaurants on the brink of closure were connected with donors to provide meals for healthcare workers and the homeless. Olivia found herself coordinating a vast network of mutual aid, her intimate knowledge of life on the economic margins proving invaluable. Vivian, meanwhile, leveraged her social connections to secure donations and lobby for policy changes to address the growing crisis. The work was exhausting and often heartbreaking. For every person they helped, there seemed to be 10 more in desperate need. Both women grappled with feelings of inadequacy and guilt, questioning whether they were doing enough. But there were moments of hope that kept them going. Like when Mr. Thompson, a retired teacher who had participated in the original program, opened his home to 3 families who had lost everything in a flood. Or when Sarah, the actress from their first group, used her platform to raise millions for emergency relief efforts. As weeks turned into months, bridging the gap became a lifeline for thousands. The media, initially focused on the bleakness of the situation, began to take notice. Stories of cross-class solidarity and community resilience, sparked by their initiative, offered a glimmer of light in dark times. Olivia and Vivian found themselves once again in the public eye, but this time, the attention felt different. There was a rawness, an urgency to their message that cut through the noise. They spoke not of abstract concepts of understanding, but of concrete actions that could make a difference. One evening, as they sat in Vivian's now modest home, reviewing the day's efforts, Olivia turned to her friend. "You know, when we started this, I thought we were teaching people to walk in each other's shoes, but now we're all walking the same difficult path," Vivian finished. As they looked at each other, exhausted but determined, both women realized that the true test of their vision was just beginning. The world was changing rapidly, and with it, the nature of the gaps they sought to bridge. But in this crisis, they had found a new purpose, a way to turn empathy into action on a scale they'd never imagined. Little did they know, their journey was about to take another unexpected turn, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and the movement they'd created. As the global crisis entered its second year, the landscape of society had shifted dramatically. The middle class had been hollowed out, with many formerly comfortable families now struggling to meet basic needs. Meanwhile, a small segment of the ultra-wealthy had managed to not only weather the storm, but increase their fortunes, widening the wealth gap to unprecedented levels. In this new reality, bridging the gap had become a powerful force for change, evolving from a social experiment into a vast network of mutual aid and advocacy. Olivia and Vivian found themselves at the helm of an organization that was part charity, part activist group, and part social movement. Their success, however, had not come without cost. Both women were exhausted, the weight of responsibility taking its toll. Olivia's relationship with Sophia, once repaired, was again strained by long hours and constant stress. Vivian and Robert, despite their best efforts, found themselves drifting apart once more, their priorities diverging in the face of crisis. It was against this backdrop that an unexpected opportunity arose. A coalition of progressive politicians, inspired by the work of Bridging the Gap, approached Olivia and Vivian with a proposition. They wanted one of them to run for a newly vacated Senate seat in the upcoming special election. The offer sent shockwaves through their lives. Neither woman had ever considered entering politics, yet the potential to effect change on a national level was undeniably alluring. As they debated the pros and cons, it became clear that this decision would be a turning point not just for them, but for the movement they had built. Olivia was initially hesitant. "Me, a senator. I barely finished high school," she argued during a late-night strategy session. Vivian, however, saw it differently. And that's exactly why it should be you, she countered. You understand the struggles of ordinary people in a way career politicians never could. As discussions continued, tensions began to rise. Vivian, while supportive of Olivia, couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. She had been the one with connections and resources at the start, yet now found herself in Olivia's shadow. Olivia, for her part, was torn between the potential to make a real difference and her fear of leaving Sophia behind. I became an activist to give her a better life, she confided to Vivian. But what kind of life will she have if I'm never there? The decision weighed heavily on both women, straining their friendship in ways they hadn't anticipated. Old insecurities and class differences, long buried, began to resurface. Vivian found herself questioning whether she had truly changed, or if her support of Olivia was just another form of patronizing charity. Olivia, sensing Vivian's withdrawal, began to doubt herself. Was she really qualified for this? Or was she just a token, a feel-good story for politicians to exploit? As the deadline for the decision loomed, events took an unexpected turn. A whistleblower came forward with damning evidence of corruption within the coalition that had approached them. The politicians, it seemed, had been using bridging the gap as cover for their own self-serving agenda. The revelation was a gut punch to both women. Everything they had worked for, all the progress they thought they'd made, suddenly felt tainted. In the midst of this crisis, Olivia and Vivian realized they had lost sight of what had brought them together in the first place, their genuine desire to create understanding and change. In a moment of clarity, they made a decision that would alter the course of their lives and the movement they had built. They called a press conference, but not to announce a Senate run. Instead, they stood side by side and exposed the corruption they had uncovered, regardless of the consequences. The fallout was immediate and intense. The political establishment turned against them, donors fled, and the media circus reached fever pitch. But as the dust settled, something remarkable began to happen. People from all walks of life, inspired by their courage and integrity, rallied around them. In living rooms, community centers, and online forums across the country, people began to organize. The movement was no longer about bridging gaps between rich and poor, but about dismantling the systems that created those gaps in the first place. Olivia and Vivian found themselves at the center of a true grassroots revolution, but as the movement grew beyond their control, they faced their greatest challenge yet: how to guide it without becoming the very power structure they sought to change. As they stood on the precipice of this new chapter, Olivia turned to Vivian. "You know," she said with a wry smile, "when I picked up that green dress, I never imagined it would lead to this." Vivian laughed, the tension of the past weeks finally breaking. "Oh, Olivia," she replied, "what began as a scandal quickly evolved into a catalyst for widespread social change. The corruption they exposed became a rallying cry for those disillusioned with the status quo, igniting a movement that transcended traditional political boundaries. As the dust settled, Olivia and Vivian found themselves at a crossroads. The movement they had inadvertently sparked was growing beyond their control, taking on a life of its own. They were hailed as heroes by some, vilified by others, but both women knew that the true challenge lay ahead. In the months that followed, they worked tirelessly to channel the energy of the movement into constructive action. Bridging the Gap evolved once more, transforming from a mutual aid network into a platform for systemic change. They organized town halls, bringing together people from all walks of life to discuss and debate solutions to society's most pressing issues. The movement's strength lay in its diversity. Former CEOs sat alongside factory workers, discussing labor rights and corporate responsibility. Climate scientists and farmers collaborated on sustainable agriculture initiatives. Educators and tech innovators reimagined the future of learning. Olivia, drawing on her experiences as a single mother and her time in the trenches of poverty, became a powerful voice for working-class families. Her authenticity and raw eloquence cut through political rhetoric, forcing lawmakers to confront the real-world implications of their policies. Vivian, leveraging her business acumen and social connections, worked to bring ethical investors and corporations into the fold. She challenged her peers in the upper echelons of society to redefine success, promoting a model of prosperity that lifted all boats rather than just mega yachts. But as the movement gained momentum, it also faced fierce opposition. Entrenched powers, threatened by the prospect of real change, fought back with everything they had. Olivia and Vivian found themselves targets of smear campaigns, legal challenges, and even physical threats. The pressure took its toll. Olivia, ever conscious of Sophia's well-being, grappled with the fear that her activism might be putting her daughter at risk. Vivian, ostracized by many in her former social circle, battled moments of doubt and loneliness. It was during this time of crisis that their friendship was tested like never before. Late one night, after a particularly grueling day of testimonies and counterattacks, Vivian broke down. "Sometimes I wonder if it's all worth it," she confessed to Olivia, her voice barely a whisper. "We've lost so much. What if we're just tilting at windmills?" Olivia, exhausted but resolute, took Vivian's hand. "Look at how far we've come," she said softly. "Remember that first week when we switched lives? We thought we were changing the world then. Now we actually are." This moment of vulnerability and reaffirmation became a turning point. Olivia and Vivian realized that their strength lay not just in their individual experiences or skills, but in their unity. They were living proof that empathy and understanding could bridge even the widest of gaps. Energized by this revelation, they redoubled their efforts. They launched a nationwide empathy initiative, inspired by their original life swap experiment, but expanded to include people from all walks of life. Politicians were challenged to live on minimum wage for a month. Corporate executives worked shifts in their factories. Suburban families hosted refugees. The results were transformative. As people stepped into each other's lives, preconceptions crumbled, and a new sense of shared humanity emerged. Policy debates, once abstract and divisive, became grounded in real-world understanding. Solutions that once seemed impossible began to take shape. 5 years after Olivia first picked up that discarded green dress, the world looked markedly different. Worker-owned cooperatives flourished alongside traditional businesses. A universal basic income, once dismissed as a pipe dream, was being piloted in cities across the country. Education and healthcare systems were being reimagined with equity at their core. But perhaps the most profound change was in the fabric of society itself. The rigid class structures that had defined American life for generations were beginning to dissolve, replaced by a new ethic of mutual respect and shared responsibility. As Olivia and Vivian stood on stage at the movement's 5th anniversary gathering, looking out over a sea of faces from all walks of life, they felt a sense of awe at what had been accomplished, but they also knew that the work was far from over. Olivia, her voice strong and clear, addressed the crowd. "5 years ago, I put on a dress that didn't belong to me, and it changed my life. But the real transformation began when I took that dress off and realized that underneath, we're all the same. We all dream. We all struggle. We all hope for a better future." Vivian stepped forward, continuing seamlessly. "The revolution we started isn't about wealth or power. It's about empathy. It's about seeing each other, truly seeing each other, and recognizing our shared humanity. That's the bridge that can span any gap." As the crowd erupted in cheers, Olivia and Vivian exchanged a look of quiet understanding. Their journey had been long and often painful, but it had led them to this moment, a moment of hope, of possibility, of true change. In the end, the story of Olivia and Vivian wasn't just about two women from different worlds. It was about the power of empathy to transform individuals, communities, and ultimately, society itself. As they stood there, hand in hand, they knew that while their work would never truly be finished, they had set in motion a revolution of the heart that would continue long after they were gone. And it all started with a discarded green dress and the courage to walk in someone else's shoes.